Hello, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. Got a really good show for you tonight. I think you'll be very entertained. We're going to start off as we usually do with What's on Your Mind. I'm Mike McGlory, Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the producing machine. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is welcome back, Mike Migliore, from a little day off last week. Glad you could make the show. And we said a lot of things that you might have disagreed last week, so we'll just start fresh all over again here. And I'm on the Pirate bandwagon, in case anybody wants to know.
There's a surprise.
Well, I'm a front runner, like most Pittsburgh fans. And they're 24-24, so there's parties in the city now because we're at 500. And Alvarez is up to 215 again. And that's not his weight. I think he's got 5 more pounds. But he is hitting 215, so good luck to him. And McCutcheon's doing a great job. That $51 million, it looks like they're getting some value there at 339. And the pitching staff, who would think J. Mack would have a great game and go 8 innings and wanted to go 9? Last year he couldn't go past 6 innings. So maybe, Chip, this team has improved. That's what's on my mind.
Thanks, Al. Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Magic Mike. Welcome back. Just wanted to send out a shout out. Last weekend was I believe, the 12th annual Kumite Classic in God's country, Monroeville, at the Convention Center out there. And I was able to co-host it. I think I've been a co-host at that particular event the last 6 years. And got an opportunity to interview some really great icons out of the city of Pittsburgh. I tell you what, one of them was Kurt Angle, an Olympic gold medalist from Mount Lebanon, probably more well known for being a WWE world champion, and a great heavyweight champ of the world, Michael Moore, who's originally from Menneson, PA.
Wow. The Menneson Mauler.
The Menneson Greyhound, even though he fought out of the Crunk Gym in Detroit, but he was a heavyweight champion in the world. Antonio Brown, who was my pick a couple years ago with the Pittsburgh Steelers, was there, and Sean Spence, wow, 3rd round pick out of Miami. We had some great conversations. I think a great deal of that young man, even though he's a little undersized linebacker, but he's a tackling machine. So it was a great time, and a friend of mine got inducted into the Kumite Classic Hall of Fame, and that's a guy who's been a community service activist for 37 years, Bill Neal. So that's what's on my mind.
Thanks, Jim. Chip, what's on your mind?
I'm welcome back again, Mike. It's very good to have you sitting on the right side again this evening.
Day's not over, don't be too happy.
But what's on my mind is, we have dragged ourselves through the 7th week of the Roger Clemens baseball trial. And, I've been railing about this for 7 weeks because I believe it's a big waste of time, and it continues to be. The prosecution took 7 weeks to present their case. I don't think anybody that's on the jury remembers what the case is about. But the defense team says that they're going to wrap up their defense in about 2 weeks. So the poor people on the jury are going to spend almost 3 months of their lives trying to determine whether or not Roger Clemens told a lie. I was listening to a comment attributed to Barry Bonds, and Barry Bonds, somebody was asking him, he had inquired about getting a job in the front office of the San Francisco Giants. And he says, so I'm a convicted felon, So what did he get convicted of doing? He got convicted of lying. Hasn't served any real hard time over that. And I wonder what they're going to do to Roger Clemens if, in fact, that they do find out that he lied to Congress. But it couldn't be a bigger waste of time, and that's what's on my mind right now.
Chip, it's interesting because the fact is, you're right. People don't really even understand what the trial is about. They're not trying him. He's not being charged with doing steroids. He's being charged with lying to Congress. He could actually get out of this by running for Senate. Or he could become Attorney General. Because they lie to Congress all the time. What's the problem?
Great point, Mike. Great point.
Well, you got a couple other points. Jim brought up Bill Neal, who also was a friend of mine.
Did he say
Jim
was?
Jim and I did a show called Champions. I guess quite a few years back now, and it was a show run by Bill Neal, and this is actually the third TV show that Jim and I have done together. We did Steel City Sports World, and now we're also doing Pittsburgh Sportsline. So Jim and I have been doing this for a long time. And Chip's very new to this, but he's got a lot of good baseball knowledge, and he kind of fit in comfortably. And Al's the producer, and sometimes I feel like maybe we need to get Al a little bit more comfortable. So I sat down and decided today I'm going to talk about a subject that Al knows an awful lot about.
Babe Ruth.
Couldn't think of anything. But I decided I'd go ahead and talk about horse racing. Because Al has owned some horses. June 9th, the Belmont Stakes. I'll have another who's won the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, has a chance to go for the Triple Crown. I would love to see this horse win the third race and win the Triple Crown. Not going to happen. People who know racing a lot better than I do talk about speed horses can't go the distance. The Belmont Stakes is a quarter mile longer than the Kentucky Derby, which is a mile and a quarter. The Belmont's a mile and a half. And the Preakness is even a little bit less than a mile and a quarter. It's a mile and 3/16. So it's a step up by a quarter mile for these horses. Having watched a lot of racing this year at least, and having watched the Kentucky Derby, my picks to win the Belmont Stakes first is Doulahan. Doulahan came in third in the Kentucky Derby, and if you watch that race, you'll see that horse come from way behind. And if this race had gone any longer, I'm sure he would have passed Bodemeister, and he would have passed I'll Have Another. I believe that Doulahan will win the Belmont Stakes and stop this Triple Crown opportunity. If not Doulahan, there's another horse named Union Rags who I think also has a chance. But like I said, I would love to see I'll Have Another win this. There has not been a Triple Crown winner since 1978, which was affirmed. Actually, 77 and 78, Seattle Slew and Affirmed won the Triple Crown back-to-back. 4 years before that, Secretariat, probably the greatest racehorse of all time, won the Triple Crown in 73, and before that it had been 25 years since it happened. It's now been 34 years since a Triple Crown winner. Since 1900, there have been 21 horses that have won the Kentucky Derby and then the Preakness and not won the Belmont Stakes to win the Triple Crown. It's a very, very hard thing to accomplish. Al, you do know a lot about horse racing. I was just kind of jerking around a little. What do you think? Is there not?
Hold on 1 second, man, before we go to Al. Who do you think might win it?
Doulahan, horse named Doulahan.
And who's the other one you mentioned?
Union Rags.
And the other one you mentioned that he went past?
Well, I'll Have Another was the
Who
winner.
Who owns that one? Nick Farley?
Nick Farley? No. No, that would be, I have quite a few more.
Well, first of all, I can't believe he'd won a horse called Union Rags to even come in there. But I respect his knowledge there. Mike is pretty much spot on with this stuff. And it has been 34 years since a horse like Affirmed and Alydar. That was another battle that they had. Alydar could have been the Triple Crown winner if it weren't for Affirmed that year. And you have the same thing happening with Bodemeister and I'll Have Another. Now, the sad part about it is most people are betting I'll Have Another just because of the name. There's a lot of drinkers out there, and they gamble. So they mix a couple of those things together. So they're just betting that. But truthfully, the horse, I'll Have Another, and Chip's right on board with that. I think that this will be, if there's not too much traffic there and he gets a nice trip like he has, I'll Have Another can close. He's proved already that he's a great closer. He can also leave a little bit. When you can get position on the track, maybe sit second or third and not get parked out on the outside, common sense tells you, Smoking Jim is a scout. If you run one length out, you're going to run a longer mile than the guy on the inside. Same with horse racing. So I'll Have Another can get position. Bodemeister, he'll go to the front end. That's his style. And he can't back it off enough. Union Rags is a quality horse. He could be right in the ticket. Doulahan, it might be a battle that way. But I think they have this horse, I'll Have Another, at the top of his game. And he's actually getting stronger in the workouts that they have, if you read anything there, that he's actually trying to take it easy, and the horse is feeling so good that this just might be the year.
Well, the question I have, and I haven't really been paying a whole lot of attention to the Triple Crown race, but I heard some inference that there was something about the trainer being
I'll
suspended.
explain that to you.
And
Yeah.
if you could shed some light on that, because I think that's plays into a little bit to the story.
Right, and horses like athletes, the trainers, everybody's looking for an edge. What he has been accused of is milkshaking a horse, putting like baking soda and a mixture of sugar and other things. And what they do is, lactic acid builds up in your body, and they only race for about 2 minutes. So if you can cut down the pain in your body, the lactic acid, that's the theory behind the milkshake. And he's actually been acquitted of that a couple times too. So you have trainers, when they have some success, everybody thinks they're cheating. Now, I don't know if everybody's cheating, but it doesn't make sense there. So they'll figure out what's going on, but that's what they do. Some trainers do that type of thing and have been convicted
I heard
of it.
there was some kind of inference there, and I was like, well, how's this going to play out, with the race a couple of weeks away?
But here's the bottom line with it. Horses, just like athletes, have to be in great shape for that to matter. You're only talking about maybe 1/10 of a second, 2 or 3 steps, that'll make a difference. That's the edge they're actually looking for. 1 stride, 1 neck, win by a nose. And when you're going 1.25 miles, Mike's right, it's a 1/4 mile difference in the Kentucky Derby. But look at how I'll have another come back right at the end, and it looked like he still had more speed to go. So I don't think he showed everything he had. I'll make you a little wager that he'll come on as fast as he can at the end this time to get that Triple Crown. And like you said, it hasn't been done in 34 years. And you have a young jockey here, Mike Gutierrez, who wants to prove something also. So you got a double threat there.
Everybody wants to win. Bodemeister won't be running in the Belmont. Dolahan
Right.
and Union Rags both ran in the Kentucky Derby and both skipped the Preakness.
Right.
Because they think that this is their better chance to win. Personally, they said I think that Dolahan will win the whole thing. But I would really, really like to see I'll have another do that.
It's going to be an interesting race. It'll be a good time for everybody. There's a lot of interest in it. Horse racing at this time of year for 6 weeks, it's a pretty popular sport there. And look at those crowds that you have.
And that's June 9th. You're going to be down at the Meadows for your Hugathon event, is that right?
June 13th. Come on out there. $25 admission, nice charities. We'll go out to the Meadows, watch some good racing, harness racing. They're not jockeys, they're drivers. They're in a sulky. So thanks for that little segue and lead in there, Mike. I appreciate that.
And between now and the Hugathon, if people would be so kind to go to my Facebook page, they can get Chip and Elle's tanning tips.
Are you serious? My man. This is just a shadow here.
Published up there.
Mike's in the light. Mike went to the light. And that's Smoking Jim Frazier from Champion Enterprises. We need a close-up on that one. Come on now.
Well, we said that the last Triple Crown winner in horse racing was affirmed in 1978. The last baseball Triple Crown winner as far as hitting goes was Carl Yastrzemski in 1967.
Wow.
Baseball's Triple Crown in batting is, of course, batting average, home runs batted in. Carl Yastrzemski for the Red Sox, I believe, was the last person to do that. And we used that to jump into some discussion with Chip and get into the Pirates and
to speak to the Triple Crown in baseball, I know there's a number of different gentlemen have flirted with the possibility of winning the Triple Crown, and I think that's another one of those unattainable baseball records, almost like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. I don't think that's something that's going to be broken in our lifetimes. With the way baseball is now, with the travel and the specialized pitchers. You've got some guys. Back in the '60s, you started a game, you pitched until your arm fell off. They didn't have a guy that came in and pitched from the 5th to the 6th inning. I was listening yesterday after the Pirate game to one of these radio stations, and people were calling in and complaining because Clint Hurdle took James McDonald out with a 4-0 lead after pitching 8 solid innings, and I'm like, the Pittsburgh fans, you just can't satisfy them. They're complaining about the way we're winning games. It was a right decision to pull McDonald out after 8 solid innings. You put your relievers in there. He's done his job. If you can get 8 solid innings out of your starting pitching, you're gonna win a lot of baseball games. But so the Pirates are 24-24. They playing real solid baseball. Looking over their statistics, their team pitching ERA after Sunday's game was 3.25, which is extremely respectable, and that's top to bottom. That's the relievers, starters, and everybody. They don't have a lot of big win totals on the starting pitchers. I think the most wins any of the starters have is 4, and that's James McDonald, and he's vying for the position of the ace of the staff. But they're winning games. They probably have the lowest team batting average of any team in the major leagues, but they somehow seem to find a way to keep winning. And I liked what happened the other night with this rookie Haig came up and he had his first walk-off HBP.
Yeah, I watched that.
Exploded in the bottom of the ninth, and he got plumped with a 95-mile-an-hour
Chip, he took one for the team.
Yeah, he took one right in the ribs, and the Pirates walked off and won. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a different year for the Pirates because that used to happen to the Pirates, not for them.
Maybe the worm has turned finally after 19 years, Chip.
Well, I'm just counting like this. There's 58 more wins we got to go, and I think we got them under our belt this year.
First, I want to go on record as saying that when we talked about this earlier, I said that giving a contract to Nate McLouth was a huge mistake.
Where'd he go?
And, they dumped Nate McLouth, and in the event that they should flirt with 500 for the rest of the year, I'd like to make sure that I told you the turning point was the day that they got rid of Nate McLouth.
Wow. Welcome back. Welcome back,
Mr. Migliore. That's right.
You're the best on that.
The Pirates, I mean, they're playing pretty impressively right now. It's unfortunate you can't play the Chicago Cubs every day. But, they turned around, they beat the Reds yesterday. I don't know how they're doing right now. But no, don't bother. The Reds were a pretty good team.
4-1-2.
Well, the Sunday when the Reds were playing, I forget who they were playing. I saw bits and pieces of that game. They had 9 home runs between the two teams on Sunday afternoon, and then the Pirates, for all rights and purposes, shut them out last night. They got 1 run in the 9th inning, and that was really a gift, but the Reds right now are a really hot team. I think right now I'd say they're the favorite to win the division. St. Louis, I don't know if it's going to have the legs. They got Lance Berkman out, who was the first baseman they got to replace Albert Pujols, and he's out indefinitely with an injury. And I think the Cardinals are going to have problems repeating like they did last year.
Yeah, the Cardinals lost a lot. One of the things that even like Chip said, Pittsburgh fans are never happy. One of the situations that the Pirates are finding themselves in are that now they're like in the middle of the pack. There are 8 or 9 teams that have a worse record than they do, meaning that when draft time comes, the Pirates will not be drafted in the first 2 or 3 draft pick, as they have been routinely. So this is kind of a time where they're going to have to do with what they have. They're not going to get those, not that they really did anything great with those draft picks anyway. They usually missed the right target. But they're going to have to deal with what they have now, and whatever changes they need to make are going to have to come by way of trades or free agent signings.
Well, and to speak to that point, Mike, the draft picks they made the last few years were pretty much no-brainers because they had the first pick in the draft and they had the pick of the later. Really what we're going to find out is how good the scouting staff is now, because now they're going to have to do a little bit more work. They're going to have to find those unpolished gems, those guys that are picked up in the later to middle rounds, that will turn out to be major league prospects, and we'll find out what kind of a scouting staff that they have actually developed. They didn't have one before because, before Nutting took over, they didn't even have a farm system. They had, who knows what they had, but certainly there wasn't anything in the that was going to make it to the major leagues.
And they just brought up a shortstop from AAA, right?
Yeah, Slayton or something.
Yeah, it's so he may be pretty good working with Neil Walker, turning those double plays. So we'll see.
It's funny that we talked about Bill Mazeroski and his credentials that got him into the Hall of Fame, and Bill Mazeroski's the one that taught Neil Walker to play second base.
Wow!
Because Neil Walker, when he was drafted out of high school, he was a catcher. Okay, and he got into the Pirates organization, and then they discovered that your future's not going to be behind the plate. And they had Bill Mazeroski working with him in spring training, and they spent hours and hours turning the double play because Bill Mazeroski turned the double play like nobody else. He had the softest hands, and he turned that, the ball went from his glove to his hand to the first baseman, and like effortlessly. And you look at the way Neil Walker turns a double play, and you can see that the legacy has been passed down.
And Neil Walker was one of the best high school wide receivers ever seen. He actually had a scholarship offer to Clemson to play football, but seeing him in the newspaper the other day ago when somebody took his legs out from under him on a slide, probably brought back some football memories for Neil.
Hey, Chip, on your conversation with the scouts, the silver lining is they've paid so much money to these minor league ball players that since they won't get them in the top draft, like Mike's saying and Chip's saying, that'll actually save them money. They won't be paying a lot of money, and with that new agreement, they're not allowed to spend all that money in the minor leagues. So maybe Nutting had a plan that's going to work here.
Well, they're going to have to start spending some of that money on the major league level, and they're going to have to determine how they're going to spend that. They need to keep Neil Walker on the team. He's a homegrown product, a local boy, great for PR. And putting fannies in the seats, but at some point they're going to have to decide how much money are they going to put on the plate for Pedro Alvarez. Now, Pedro Alvarez is showing signs of life now. I mean, his batting average still leaves a little bit to be desired, but RBI guys and big home run hitters have a tendency of having low batting averages. It's not. It's more infrequent that a big home run hitter has a 300 average, but. What's he going to be worth? Because I'm sure his agent and him are going to have different ideas than what the team is going to feel that he's going to be worth.
And when's Alvarez due?
I believe they may have him for one more year?
I thought it's at least one more year before, for next year.
Yeah,
then I think
I don't know if they have an option on that or not, but I know Walker's going to be up, pretty soon, and that's somebody that I think, he does a lot of work. Locally with the team, and he's just he was a great signing.
And he seems to be a leader too.
Yeah, and he's identifiable because he went to Pine Richland, so he's a local boy.
Well, his average is up, I think, to 263 now, so I think he's the second highest average on the team. I was looking through some of the stats, and I don't even want to repeat them. So I'm glad they're winning. And I don't want to make fun of that. At least they are. And it does help being in a weak division. So, and baseball seems to be going through that right now. Look at Pujols. I think he only has 7 home runs now.
But
there's a power outage throughout.
I hear that we're playing in a weak division, but if you look across the major leagues, there's not a big disparity in the top running teams and the teams that are in the middle. I mean, there's only like a 5, 6, 7 game difference. And, those are differences that can be made up. I mean, look what happened with the Red Sox and the Braves last September.
Here's the question I have for you.
They completely fell apart. They lost big leads in their divisions to not even make the playoffs.
Here's the question. If we stay close to 500, we're past that 100-game mark, do you try to get a couple other players who can actually hit? Because when it gets later in the season, if we're still hitting this 220, 215, 170, I mean, that's when you need it. Because sure, you got to get the wins. A win's a win. I always felt that way anywhere in a season. You always hear guys, this win means so much more late in the season. Well, if you won it earlier, you didn't have to worry about it. But will they make a trade or two like they tried last year for hitting this year?
And listening to what Neil Huntington said about it, is that the trade's got to make sense for everybody, if they're going to make a trade. I don't really think that that you start trying to monkey with it. I mean, I think what they're doing right now is they're building a team that will stand the test of time over the next couple of years, and they don't got to let the core of these guys stay together. I think one of the biggest problems that the Pirates have had over the last 20 years is that every time they get a little close to something, we've got to micromanage it. Let's bring in this guy. He had a great season 8 years ago. Maybe he'll have that. Maybe the Lightning will strike again. I think they just need to count on the people that they've got and develop the talent they have. And I think the problem that they have with the batting, that's something that can be worked on. I mean, they're playing excellent defense. Their pitching's as good as you're going to get in the major leagues, and they're batting horribly, but they're winning baseball games.
Right, but it's because of the pitching. Right now, Ray Searage is the most valuable player on the Pirates. He goes out there, and normally they talk to a pitcher and they tell him, you know what, we got to get the guy in the bullpen warmed up. Can you just delay it a little bit, get this guy, walk him or whatever? He's going out there giving him some tips. They're getting the guys out. Mm-hmm. So they're not even going to the bullpen as much as they did last year. So maybe that's a difference. Maybe they've learned a little. Maybe they're picking their spots. Maybe some of these pitchers realize, and Clint Hurdle's even admitted that he might have overdone using the relief pitchers. So he's letting these guys go a little bit, except for J-Mac the other night. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things you talk about, trading for this, trading for that, got to remember that when you do a trade, there's two teams involved. And the only teams that are coming to the Pirates are teams that might want a fifth starter, or they want hand-to-hand. And if you give up your starting pitching, like you said, that's the only thing that's keeping them alive right now. If you start tinkering with that, well, then you start to lose that. And Hanrahan he's the best player that the Pirates have. Giving him up, that's going to hurt them a lot.
No, and I don't think they can get enough value in return to make a trade like that, viable. I say play the hand you got, and I think you'll be. I think you're going to compete for a wild card spot this year, and I think it'll be interesting as we get through July and August, and we actually got a baseball team to talk about in September.
Well, I don't know when's Steeler camp open up.
Not only that, but I mean, the Pirates aren't in a position where one player is going to come in and make a huge difference. And if there is a player like that, then it's certainly a player that has no trade clause in his contract. He ain't coming here anyway. So I mean, it's like like I said before, they're going to have to start to learn to build this team. They're going to have to start to get people that can recognize baseball talent, who's good, who's not good. And they need to start to make some moves, either through the draft or through free agency.
Well, maybe the Yankees have a hitter that they'll subsidize like they did with A.J. Burnett. Because actually, if there was some run support with A.J. Burnett, he'd have a better record. And then they're also talking about he's actually helped McDonald and his pitching and some of these other pitchers. Grilly was talking about the other day that just what the tips that he's given some of these guys, the aggressiveness that he brings to the mound, the other pitchers are doing that instead of just trying to play around and throw a perfect pitch. They're just throwing the ball down there and trusting the fielders. So maybe A.J. Burnett's a more valuable player than I thought.
Yeah, he's telling the pitchers not to bunt.
Well, he learned from that. He said in an interview, he goes, one thing I did learn is how to bunt.
That's a good point that you bring up about bringing in a veteran like A.J. Burnett. The guy's been pitching in the major leagues for 13 years, and Mike's talked about one of his favorite pitchers of all time was a Hall of Famer named Nolan Ryan. And if you remember when Nolan Ryan was a young pitcher playing for the amazing Mets back in 1969, I mean, he had hitters so uncomfortable in the batter's box because the ball was coming in at 100 miles an hour. They didn't know where it was going to end up, but he was really wild. And as he got along in his career, 6, 7, 8 years, is when he actually learned how to pitch. And once he really learned how to pitch and paint the edges of the plate, he became a Hall of Famer and he became the most feared pitcher in baseball. And it takes a few years for these guys, because everybody comes up and they've got this arm like a lightning bolt. And they can throw the ball 95, 98 miles an hour. But Greg Maddux pitched for the Atlanta Braves for a lot of years. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. The guy never threw a pitch over 88 miles an hour, and he won 300 and some games. So you don't have to throw the ball 100 miles an hour to get people out. It's where you position the ball, and you go in, you go out, you go up, you go down, you change your speeds. And it makes a big, big difference.
Well, who was the better pitcher for the Mets, Nolan Ryan or Tom Seaver?
Tom Seaver.
Well, at which point in their career? I mean, Tom Seaver was
Was a great Hall of Fame pitcher.
and early in his career, he was a better pitcher than Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan became a better pitcher for a longer period of time, because it took him a little bit more time to mature. I mean, would I have taken either one of them on my pitching staff? Absolutely.
No question of a doubt about that.
At the time, when they both played for the Mets, Seaver was definitely a better pitcher, but like Nolan Ryan's career was a better career than Seaver's.
Oh, his longevity.
Nolan Ryan struck out 5,000 batters through 7 no-hitters.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Ryan, he was, to me, of the modern era, he's the best pitcher that played. I mean, you go back, you talk about Walter Johnson and all the Cy Young and all these old timers that pitched.
I'll take Cy Young. I'll take Cy Young from way back there.
There is a story where the Mets manager, I believe, was maybe Casey Stengel at the time, pulled Tom Seaver and put in Tug McGraw, who was their reliever.
Wow.
And went out to Mom McGraw and said, "Do you think you can do this?" And he said, "Do what? You just took the best pitcher of the game out of the game. What do you want me to do?"
I read that quote, Mike.
I like
I've
that.
heard that before. Casey Stengel had 1,000,000 of those different lines and quotes there. One of the best managers. But Tom Seaver as a Met was definitely better than Nolan Ryan. He got better with age, and there was no taint on his record of anything like steroids or milkshaking or anything like that with Nolan Ryan. It was just hard work.
There was a time in baseball where they had a pitcher that, and again, he made the Hall of Fame, was Gaylord Perry. And he never got tainted with steroids or anything like that, but I mean, they used to put enough Vaseline on the ball. He used to keep gloves underneath the bill of his cap. He used to throw a ball and it would slip out of the catcher's glove.
Yeah, but what about the sandpaper that they had too? How about the catchers would help them out? There were a lot of edges. They had sandpaper on their shin guards, and they'd scrape the ball there because now they throw a ball out all the time.
Well, after every pitch they throw, but for a minute the ball hits the ground. That gets a little edge on the ball.
Something the pitcher
What do
can
you think
grip.
the Negro boys would be doing now? They'd be out of business. They would have never got their knuckleball over there. Look at what careers they had with the knuckleball, and I forget, Phil, I thought, had the little grease ball and spitball going too. And what did he win? Maybe 270 games?
Wow.
So, I mean, as a knuckleball pitcher.
That speaks to another point. Talking about baseball and the 300-game winners. I don't think we're going to see too many 300-game winners in baseball moving forward, because the way the game's played, I just think that guys aren't going to last long enough in their careers.
Well, you hit on it
to see
before,
that happen.
specialization. We have a pitcher come in for the 7th inning, a pitcher come in for the 8th inning, then a pitcher come in for the 9th inning. So, I mean, and then you have guys, they count the pitches. If they're at 100 pitches, you're done. Now, what happened to guys? Look at Satchel Paige, pulling a name out from the past. He pitched double headers and triple headers and went to play games in different ballparks. So how did he last and even played in the major leagues when he was in the 60s?
Wow.
So, I mean, that shows you that if you're in shape and you do all the right things for staying in shape, you can play. So they've changed it. The game has changed.
Yeah. It's funny we should talk about pitchers, because we started the baseball conversation when I talked about Carl Yastrzemski being the last batter to win the Triple Crown. Winning the Triple Crown for pitching, however, doesn't seem to be quite as hard, because last year Justin Verlander of Detroit won the American League Triple Crown, and Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers won the National League Triple Crown. Most wins, best ERA, and most strikeouts. One of the things that maybe makes it a little bit easier is they do it by leagues. The American League has their own stats, and National League has their own stats. If those were combined, neither one of those guys would have won the Triple Crown last year, because Verlander had the most wins and most strikeouts, but Kershaw had a better ERA than he did.
Well, and when you compare the National League and the American League as a pitcher, you're talking about apples and oranges, because in the American League you're facing 9 hitters in the opposing team's lineup, and when you're pitching in the National League, you're pitching against 8 hitters, and you're pitching against
you have to bat.
there's a pitcher. So, it's a little bit of a dynamic, but, with the statistics that Mike was talking about with Justin Verlander and Clayton Kershaw, one of those two guys won the MVP last year. And there was a big argument as to whether or not that Verlander was a bona fide MVP candidate, because they said, some people say that, hey, how can somebody that only plays once every 5 days be the MVP? But if you look at the statistics that he put up and what he meant to his team, it's easy to say. But people have difficulty doing that. They think that the MVP award should be won by somebody that plays every day.
Well, look at the game that he pitched against the Pirates there. When you talk about an MVP game, there's a guy that it looked like a no-hitter was coming no matter what. Mm-hmm. And how many players can do that on a team? How many players in the league can do that where he just dominated? It reminds us of your Nolan Ryans, your Bob Gibsons, Tom Seaver, guys like that in the past.
Carlton.
Steve Carlton, definitely. Burt Blyleven at times with that curveball that he had. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of stuff like that.
And right now, you're reminding me of Al Oliver. But
Scoops. Scoops.
Hey, as we're talking about bringing the heat, we got to talk a little bit NBA. I tell you what, I predicted that the Miami Heat not only would win the NBA championship this year, but I thought the easiest road for them to the championship would be against the Boston Celtics. The Boston got a great team, but even without the big man, Boston Celtics is one of the worst rebounding teams in the National Basketball League. And so it's going to be an easy I got the Heat winning this series in 5 because they'll dominate the boards against Boston, and they got a wide open lane, and nobody loves a wide open lane more than the second greatest basketball player of all time, LeBron James. But it's going to be a lot harder. Whoever comes out of the West, I believe it might be Oklahoma, even though San Antonio's playing well, but both those teams are great rebounding teams, so it's going to be probably a 7-game series that the Miami Heat will win it all.
Jim, did you say San Antonio's playing well? They might not lose again in our lifetime.
It's lights out. Where's he at? I thought you were our basketball scout.
And I'll tell you,
they have not lost.
The Oklahoma San Antonio series, it's going to go 7 games. San Antonio got off on the right foot, and then last night the Heat just took apart the Celtics. And I think, I was thinking after, going into the series, I was like, okay, the Heat's going to take out the Celtics in 4 games. And I think the Celtics might get that one win based off of, how badly they got taken apart last night. They're complaining about the refs and they're calling the technical fouls. It had nothing to do with anything. They got outplayed. They got outplayed by a younger team, more talented. The Celtics, are a good, solid team, but I just think they're a little long in the tooth, and their best days are behind them.
And they're a little beat up also. Ray Allen can't really play. They're talking about sitting him down for a game or so.
He got bone spurs.
Right.
It's
So
not going to make any difference. Seriously, Heat Celtics is a huge mismatch.
right.
It really is.
I agree.
The Heat have just such an easy path to the finals, and I think the Oklahoma City is a young and upcoming team, and you've got San Antonio's made kind of a transformation, with DeJuan Blair, but they still, everything revolves around.
He hasn't played.
Everything revolves around Tim Duncan. As long as he's going to be there, that team's going to revolve around Tim Duncan, and nobody knows it. Tim Duncan's the most humble player that I've seen in the NBA, probably in the last 30 years.
Wow. Well, I'm with smoking, Jim. I've been
More
all
humble than
along.
Allen Iverson.
Practice? We're talking about practice.
That's some good sarcasm. Welcome back, Mike. Glad to have you back on board.
And tomorrow night the Stanley Cup Finals start. We got the Los Angeles Kings and the New Jersey Devils. And is this going to be the year that Martin Brodeur bows out of the NHL with his? Would this be his 5th Stanley Cup or 4th?
I think 3rd.
Okay.
I don't even know, but I think Martin Brodeur is easily the best goalie in the history of the game.
I can't argue with you there.
To me, there's no contest. I mean, there's other people who bring up Waugh and other
Dryden
guys,
and
I think to me, I think that Brodeur is definitely the best that's ever played goalie. in the game. I'm really excited to watch this matchup. I think it's going to be a good series. The Kings squeaked into the playoffs like on the last day of the season. 10 different teams had to lose for them to get in.
And they did.
Somehow they got in, and they took out the number 1 and number 2 seeds in 9 games. And they made pretty quick work of Phoenix. And they're definitely ready to play. I think that it's going to be just very exciting to see their offense and their very good defense also against New Jersey's lockdown system.
Yeah, actually, got to say, with the Penguins being out of the Stanley Cup playoff chase, quite some time. But yeah, this series does have me interested. I'm going to be paying attention to this because I can't see either team, whichever one ends up winning. I'm not going to be upset. They're going to be deserving champions, and I can't wait for the action to start.
Well, I haven't watched Los Angeles play since the great one played Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player of all time. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was going to bring up about L.A. This end of the table is the color end, so I was going to bring up with the L.A. Mike brought up a great point a few weeks ago that it would be great for hockey to have New York and L.A. in here. So they're in. So I'm going with L.A. I'll go with L.A. to be different.
Here's the thing I don't understand. You got all these New York teams that play in New Jersey, but they're called the New York, like the New York Giants and the New York Jets. And then you got the New Jersey Devils that play in New Jersey, and then the New Jersey Devils. How come they're not the New York Devils?
I think the basketball team's going to Brooklyn.
Well, yeah. So what are they going to be called? The New Jersey?
If anybody knows the answer,
That's in Brooklyn. Okay.
call in 412-831-3304. Why do they have names of the city that they don't play in?
Getting carjacked on the way to the game in Brooklyn.
That might be why. You're on to something there.
I'm kind of in the same boat with Chip, but whoever wins, I just hope to enjoy the series. On the other hand, I kind of like New Jersey because it did take Philadelphia out like the trash they are.
Yes, sure.
You got to appreciate that.
Yeah, that's not lost on me either.
And while we're on hockey, I got to talk about something that I heard a few days ago from 3 yo-yos on a very bad local radio station.
Are you a fan of that show?
Yeah, I watch it all the time. One local former NFL kicker said that, they were going on and on about the Penguins and stuff, and he said over and over again how some 19-year-old rookie held down of Jenny Malkin in the playoffs. You know what? Malkin had 8 points in 6 games. That's like 1.25 average. All right? If every Penguin was held down to that, then I think we'd probably be playing in the finals this week. How can you say that Couturier held down Malkin when he's got 1.25 average? Right? People don't score 2 goals every game or 2 points every game. Right? This 1.25, that's like Lemieux numbers. It's like Gretzky numbers. You yo-yo. If you don't watch the game, don't comment on it. Just shut up.
Nice job, Mike.
Talk about football. You know what? I watched you play. You didn't know that much about that either.
Speaking of football, I tell you what.
How'd the OTAs look?
Well, before I get to that, a friend of mine is gotten a coach in Mike Tomczak, and he backstabbed his way in.
Really?
He get with the Power, the Pittsburgh Power.
What happened there?
Mike Tomczak gets a consulting position with the Power, and within 2 weeks, the head coach Siegfried gets fired, and now Mike Tomczak is the offensive coordinator. So, and he's trying to get his foot back in the door in the National Football League. And he comes from a football family. His dad was a football coach. And I used to always joke with Mike Tomczak all the time because he was a real good high school wrestler in Ohio. And I says, what we do to quarterbacks that wrestle in southwestern Pennsylvania, you wouldn't have had no arms or legs. So stick to wrestling in Ohio. But yeah, he wormed his way in with the Power, and Siegfried took the blunt of that. So look for Mike Tomczak to weasel his way into the National Football League somehow. So,
Let's say Mike Tomczak, a decent NFL career, but a few years ago I did a pregame show with Mike Tomczak, Ellis Cannon, and
Wow.
Jim Colony out of a club down on the north side. And then afterwards, we'd either go upstairs or we'd go maybe over to the stadium and watch the games. I learned more about football watching 2 games on TV with Mike Tomczak than I learned like in my entire life before that. The guy, he knew everything, and he could just from the lineup, he'd tell me what plays they were going to run, what to watch for from the defense, and the guy has a great amount of knowledge. So he can't help he can't help but help the power out. I mean, he's got a great football mind, and I don't know what his coaching style was like, but he definitely knows the game.
and I agree with you, Magic. And I think that the sad part about football anymore, the way it's played now, where these coaches, Chuck Noll used to leave and go home at 4 o'clock. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to be a football coach. I mean, most football players are dumb jocks. And now all of a sudden these coaches are getting there at 5 o'clock in the morning, spending the night, sleeping at the facilities. And because of that, you got a guy like Mike Tomczak, who is an outstanding football mind. This is a guy who was born and raised by a father that was a great football coach. And like Magic Mike says, he understands the game, but he never wanted to be in coaching because he didn't want to put in the long hours that they do. But over time, it's in his blood. I think right now he's in a good position to transition to, because don't forget, not only football players come out of the arena leagues like Kurt Warner, but outstanding coaches. Don't forget, Gruden, John Gruden's brother Jay, is now an offensive coordinator for a national football team, and he was a head coach for many, many years in arena football, and I think that Mike Tomczak will be a great addition. He's only 49 years old, so he got a lot of football coaching in his future.
Well, do you think that's like the minor leagues in baseball now? So they're getting the systems that they would use in the pros? Is it similar that they can transition that way, or it's just a coach is a coach?
Well, if I got into coaching, I'd do it with the women's football.
Whoa, what team is that?
I think that's going to be, I mean, if you look at maybe the greatest basketball coach of all time other than Wooden from UCLA, and Pat Summitt, look at the man coach for Gino for Connecticut. I mean, that's a great job to have
for you. So when is this job opening up for the Pittsburgh Passion?
Recruiting, the locker room's a whole bit, man. That's getting paid for something that you love to do, man.
See, I have to object.
This is a family public show here.
I have to object when you're talking about the greatest basketball coach of all time in the daytime, because it's got to be night. It's got to be Bobby Knight.
I love that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And who's his best friend? Bill Parcells.
Me? Oh, Bill Parcells.
Two of the great ones.
Well, they both were at the Army together at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Bobby Knight did a lot of all the things that you heard about. But if I had a kid and he had to play for a coach, any coach that I've ever seen at any level, I'd want him to play for Bobby Knight.
Oh, yeah. There's no question. He did things the right way. He did things the right way. There's no question.
Yeah, he put your face in a salad bowl in a minute. You don't call
He'll
him
do that. He'll throw a chair at you. He'll bench you in a heartbeat, maybe even choke you or slap you around.
Have
But you're
anybody
going to graduate.
Have anybody seen Bobby Knight in person? The first time I met Bobby Knight in person, the man is huge. He's really a big guy. And I talked to, I was able to get an off-the-record interview with Bobby Knight. And because his best friend, and he tells me the best athlete, Bobby Knight played for a couple national championship teams at Ohio State. They beat Oscar Robertson with Cincinnati. Oscar Robertson was maybe the greatest college basketball player, maybe one of, if not the greatest NBA player other than Wilt Chamberlain. He averaged a triple-double for his career, Oscar Robertson. But he told me the greatest athlete he's ever been around and could have played basketball at Ohio State as well. And they went to Ohio State at the same time, was Dick LeBeau. And don't forget, Dick LeBeau, when he retired, was the second all-time leading interceptor in NFL history, and it took him a lot of years, without getting into the Hall of Fame. And I think it was because I always tell Coach LeBeau, I says the reason is because of Mackey from Baltimore Colts. Every time they show Mackey films, they show him running you over, but everybody else, they show Mackey running over about 8 guys from Detroit. And I think he ran Dick LeBeau over twice. But Dick LeBeau should have been in the Hall of Fame. And I think that the guy that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame right now, who's not in the Hall of Fame, other than Jack Tatum, who I thought was a great player, is Donnie Shell. Donnie Shell's the all-time leading interceptor for strong safeties in NFL history with 53. That's a lot of interceptions. And his greatest asset was his ability to knock people out.
Stop the run.
So
ask Earl Campbell if he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
That's true.
And he was a free agent.
And I think
right?
Troy Polamalu is going to go in the Hall of Fame, maybe a first ballot, but he's not going to touch the interception record that Donnie Shell has. I think it's high time to get the young man from South Carolina State in the National Football League Hall of Fame. It's long overdue.
While we're on the subject of the NFL, we've got all of this shenanigans that's going on with the Players Union and Roger Goodell. And I was, a little concerned about all these lawsuits that they're filing, that the Players Association is suing the Roger Goodell and the NFL for collusion and all these other things. But, because of the CBA that they signed last year, regardless of whatever happens with any of these lawsuits, that agreement can't be broken. That agreement's written in stone.
Really? Is that
it
true?
has to be on.
Did you research this?
Yes, I did this afternoon. Yes, I did.
Where's your law degree? Because the NFL will call you up right now.
Well, no, you look at the things that they negotiated into the collective bargaining agreement, they are now trying to sue against, which, if you had a problem with making these part of the agreement, then why'd you sign the agreement a year ago, or not even a year ago? But,
I'll give you a labor.
They're making more of a mockery out of the NFL right now.
Chip,
If
you're right, that would be an unfair labor practice that the NFL could sue the union on. Because what you didn't get in negotiations and you sign a contract, you can't come back and get it. So they would actually be in trouble with
they've got a nice tangled mess, and I think there's more press on what's going on out in the courtrooms than there is what's going on on the field. And Mike had mentioned before, it's kind of threw it over to Jim. How did the OTAs go? I mean, what kind of progress did we see with the Steelers in the offensive line?
Well, let's ask Aaron Ward. She may know better than me, but one thing I hope I don't like Roger Goodell, and I hope that Jonathan Vilma is right. I hope he sues him so bad that the NFL says it's time to do some trading places, and they throw Roger Goodell out, put Jonathan Vilma in there, and put Goodell out on the street where he belongs. But the OTAs went really well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's another feather in the hat for Mike Tomlin, who got another pat on the back by another magazine without coaching the game. The Sporting News voted him as the 4th best coach in the National Football League. They had Tom Coughlin number 1, Belichick number 2. And I forget who they had number 3. I think maybe Mike McCarthy, and they had Mike Tomlin number 4. So congratulations to Mike.
Brothers.
No, Harbaugh.
Harbaugh brothers were down. I think they had John ahead of Jim, but they were right next to each other, maybe 7th and 8th. So obviously, like Magic Mike says, the only thing you want to do with that article is put it in the bottom of your bird cage. That's the only thing that is good for Jim Harbaugh's the best coach in the National Football League. But the Steelers did really well. They're having a hard time learning a playbook, the terminology, like Big Ben says that wrote his theme paper on Tibet, but he needs Rosetta Stone to learn Todd Haley's playbook. But I tell you what, it's very interesting, very exciting. You know, their goal is to go with 2 rookies on the offensive line. So rookies usually cost you 2 games, 2 losses per rookie start. So right there, you're looking at 4 losses. I think they're going to go 9-7 this year. But
12-4.
But Mike Tomlin did do something as a coach. He did call Troy Polamalu and ask him to come to OTAs. I think they're going to make Troy team captain because there's nobody else left. They got rid of all the leaders. So Troy decided to give up surfing for a week and come in. And I think he's going to be the team captain of the defense. But so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year. But the Steelers really were excited in OTAs. They did a lot of work with Rainey, the 180-pound running back. And so I don't think he'll run in between tackles, but they look for him to be a kick and punt return guy.
How's the bubble screen look? They have any bubble screens?
Well, when I talked to Antonio Brown, he gave me some things that were off the record, so I'll put them on the record now. He says that they don't want him to return any kicks this year. He's a little disappointed about that. Antonio Brown is in such great shape. He rides his bicycle, which is a 10-speed with a backpack on his back, to the training facilities every day. The guy's just in unbelievable condition. He's in great shape, and so he felt like he really wanted to do kick return duties, but that's going to go to Rainey.
Well, you know, I think this is the way he played last year. He's way too valuable to be returning kicks.
Really?
I think, you know, he's going to be a much bigger part of the offense this year than he was last year.
Returning kicks is pretty important, though. That's a big part of
Steelers
the
need
offense.
somebody there.
If the 2 rookies, well, I could see Adams costing them more than 2 games. The Castro, I think, is going to be a pretty good starter. But even if they do cost him 4 games, the options are Legursky, Trey Essex. How many games is that going to cost him?
That's true. And Mike Adams is doing community service time right now, so he got to pull a lot of weeds.
I'm sure he won't.
Well, I heard
have
he's
that.
just going to school. He has to finish up school. They have to graduate first, right? He didn't do that yet.
He's going to take up some horticulture classes.
Hey, and there was an update from my brother-in-law Gary that the Pirate game was delayed. So they're still at 500 for 2 days in a row. I don't know if they're going to play, but there was a game delay.
What was it delayed for? Good taste? Or?
No, it was actually, there was a celebration in the city of Pittsburgh that we're at 500 for more than 24 hours. And that's the latest update.
You know, give him a break.
He served it up for me.
You know, it's been since April 10th was the last time.
Chip,
we were
I wasn't
500.
talking to you.
You know,
Chip, I'm not talking.
April 10th, we were 2-2. We were at
Chip,
500. You know, it's taken us a while to get past there, but we're there.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
No,
They're doing a great job. You guys have done a great job. This has been a pretty good show. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about next week. Maybe have a special guest or 2. But for Chip, Smoking Jim, and the Talking Machine, I'm Mike McGlory, and we'll see you next week.